What happens when you trap a human mind inside a completely blank canvas? No, this isn't a pitch for a new psychological thriller film. It is a real, scientifically documented neurological glitch known as the Ganzfeld Effect. And it proves something deeply unsettling about your consciousness. Your brain would rather invent a monster out of nothing than experience absolute silence. If a person sits in a room for just 20 minutes with their eyes covered by a uniform, flat color and their ears filled with a steady, unbroken stream of static hiss, their reality will completely shatter.
No specialized laboratory is required. Just a way to trick the mind into thinking it has gone completely blind and deaf. Within minutes, the subconscious unlocks its deepest doors. People report hearing footsteps behind their chair, seeing shifting shadow figures creeping from the corners of the room, and experiencing a crushing biological wave of terror. And the most unsettling part? The brain is doing all of it on purpose. This bizarre phenomenon wasn't discovered by internet daredevils or creepypasta writers. It was pioneered in 1930 by a German psychologist named Wolfgang Metzger. Metzger was obsessed with a simple question. How does the human eye perceive shape, depth, and distance? To test this, he designed an experiment that was deceptively cruel. He had human test subjects stare into a completely uniform, featureless field of light. There were no lines, no shadows, no corners, and no objects to focus on. It was a visual void. The results shocked the scientific community. Within minutes of staring into this empty space, the subjects didn't just get bored.
They began to panic. They reported that their vision felt like it was actively melting. Soon, they were seeing full, vivid shapes, flashing lights, and floating entities that did not exist. Decades later, during the heights of the Cold War, governments and military intelligence agencies across the globe took Metzger's research and studied it further. They found that by starving a human being's senses, they could disrupt a person's psychological grip on reality without ever touching them.
The human mind cannot survive in a vacuum. It demands information. And if you deny it that information, the mind will tear itself apart trying to find it. To understand exactly why the brain glitches out like this, we have to look at the mind as a biological pattern recognition engine. Every single second of waking life, the eyes, ears, nose, and skin are collecting billions of data points from the environment. The brain processes this massive stream of data to keep you alive. It analyzes the shadow in the corner to make sure it's a coat rack and not a predator. It tracks the sound outside to ensure it's just the wind and not a threat. But what happens when that vital stream of environmental data suddenly drops to absolute zero? When a person enters a state of complete sensory uniformity, the brain goes into a state of neurological panic. It assumes that the connection between the sensory organs and consciousness has been broken. It thinks the body is going blind or deaf. To fix this, the brain turns its internal amplifier all the way up to maximum. It floods the neural pathways with electrical sensitivity, desperately hunting for any signal in the silence.
But because there is no actual external data to find, the brain begins to misinterpret its own internal background noise. It takes random subconscious thoughts, buried anxieties, and old biological memories and projects them outward. It turns internal thoughts into external reality. And because the brain is in survival mode, it doesn't hallucinate pleasant things. It hallucinates threats. The reason the Ganzfeld effect has gone viral across the internet is because people have found they can recreate a rough version of it with almost nothing. Online, the setup usually comes down to 4 basic elements. A halved ping-pong ball taped over each eye, so there's no edge or texture for the eye to focus on. just a uniform white void.
A single red light, since a solid, evenly diffused color is what actually produces the effect. The red simply bleeds through the plastic into an unbroken crimson fog. Noise-canceling headphones playing a steady wash of white noise, loud enough to erase the sounds of the room. And stillness, lying flat, not moving, letting the body settle into the same uniform nothing as the eyes and ears. Set it up like that, and within minutes, the mind starts running the very panic response described a moment ago. Here's what that descent tends to look like, stage by stage. For the first 5 minutes, most people hit what researchers might call the boredom wall. Nothing seems to happen. The mind wanders, muscles twitch, and it can feel a little silly, staring into plastic and red light. But by around minute 10, something shifts. The vibrant red fog suddenly seems to fade, replaced by a cold, eerie gray. The visual cortex adapts to the color so completely that it briefly stops registering it at all. By minute 15, the auditory distortions tend to begin. The steady hum of white noise starts to twist. Many people report hearing a door creak open, heavy footsteps on the floor, their own name whispered. Past the 20-minute mark, full sensory hallucinations can take over. Because the brain is completely starved for raw data, it begins to leak. Geometric shapes form out of the gray mist, twisting into crowds of faceless people. Some describe a sudden, crushing physical weight on the chest, paired with a primal instinct that something else has entered the room. In that state, the mind has effectively generated a living horror scene out of nothing at all. The true magic and the true unsettling part of the Ganzfeld Effect is how fast it ends. The moment the headphones come off and the plastic lenses are pulled away, the entire illusion shatters instantly. The room is just a room again. The shadows go back to being furniture, and the whispers disappear. There are no lasting physical effects, no chemicals involved, just a lingering cold sweat and a racing pulse. It's a genuinely fascinating demonstration of how much of what we call reality is actually just the brain filling in gaps. But it's also a real, documented dissociative state, not a party trick, and it's worth taking seriously rather than casually. Anyone with a history of anxiety, panic attacks, or a dissociative or psychotic disorder should be especially cautious with anything that deliberately induces this kind of sensory disruption. That's not a throwaway disclaimer. It's the same caution researchers apply when running these experiments under actual supervision.
If you've ever experienced sensory deprivation, sleep paralysis, or a lucid dream that felt viscerally real, let me know what your brain showed you in the comments. Subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. Sleep tight.